I was talking, I didn't know I mute myself again.
I was wondering, I struggled to literally just hear you, so I was wondering if everything was fine. So.
Yeah, I muted my mic unconsciously. So I was saying that this is my real face, gentle, calm, with no potential to be a cyber criminal.
Interesting. Let me just pull up my screen. You know, the other people used to do this thing again that will go to. Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Victor. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Next to my camera. My camera looks like a video.
Let me check if we have everyone here. Okay, we have the entire house here now. We're good. So I'm going to try and start the webinar to go live so people are able to join now.
Is there a link for people to join, or they have to pre-register?
Yeah, pre-register, but I mean, it's also streaming on YouTube, so I can get that. Yeah.
Okay, if you can get me the YouTube link, so I just share it.
All right.
Hi, everyone, every other person on the panel. As we used to say in those days, my co-debaters.
Your co-panelist this time around.
This time is co-panelist.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jane. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Nice to see everyone.
The same here.
Yeah, so we've got people coming in already. Let me just yeah. All right. Yeah, we're live now. Hi, everyone. You're welcome to another episode of Privacy Bar and Bants. We're all excited to be here for the first episode this year. Thank you for being part of our journey last year when we started out. And just like every other episode, I'm excited to be here with everyone today. And I'm sure our guests this week around are super excited to be here. I'm wishing everyone a rewarding year, an amazing year, a profitable and a fruitful one ahead. Again, like we do here every week, bi-weekly on Privacy Bar and Bants. It's a session specially created raising awareness around issues of data protection, privacy, online safety, but in an exciting way with the less toga of suit and tie. And Bar and Bants is an initiative of Tech Advisory, who has been a sponsor and who's been part of what we're doing here since we started out. And this week, we're discussing a very exciting topic, digital identity and data protection. For those who probably have been curious about this interesting topic, you might probably have seen a whole lot of things depending on where you live, because this conversation, we're not just having a Nigerian conversation today. We have, I guess, we have a guest also come from outside Nigeria. But digital identity is a very, very fundamental aspect of our being. And this is something that broadly intersects with the concept of data protection. And today we've got like really amazing guests who are really going to dissect and get into the gist. Let me put it that way. So before I take too much time, I'm going to pass it over to our guests this week to quickly introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with the usuals. Victor Olani, there you go.
Hi everyone. It's Victoria Oloni. It's nice to be here again. Happy New Year.
Favorite troublemaker. Nuruddin, over to you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm not going to follow Victoria and saying Happy New Year. I think we should have a cutoff time for saying that, right? Maybe after the 6th
Doesn't
of
work that way. If I see you in June and I've not seen you all year, I'm going to say Happy New Year.
No, we should have a cutoff time for it. After the 3rd day of the new year, you shouldn't say that anymore. That's what I think. I mean, you can't see me in June and say Happy New Year. Come on, Victoria. All right, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Nuruddin. Sorry for the background noise. I think it's probably customary right now for me to have that background noise. We're looking forward to a delightful and interesting session. I think that's it from me. Ridwan.
Thank you, Nuruddin, for the introduction. Yeah, we've got an exciting guest here today, Lejeune Abbas. Lejeune, say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lejeune. I'm a resident of Kenya. I'm also an advocate of the High Court, and I'm very honored to be here today. Looking forward to very interesting conversations. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for that introduction. Then to the big one in the house, boy.
I don't understand what you meant by the big one in the house.
Well, you're a big fish now. You know you're a big fish when it comes to what we're discussing today.
I pray. Anyways, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be here. This is my first time joining this session, and it's something I'm really excited to do. Digital identity is something I'm very.
Wait, you may need to speak up.
Okay. How is it now? Is it better?
Yeah, it's better now. Yeah.
So good evening, everybody. I'm excited to be here today. This is my first time of joining this conversation, and I look forward to an interesting one. Digital identity is something I'm very, very interested in and something I've been working on. So hence my excitement. It's a pleasure to be here. The name is Boye Adegoke, and I look forward to a great time.
All right. Thank you, Boye, Thank you, Boye, for the almost humble introduction that you made of yourself. I mean, I'm surprised you're not even talking about the phenomenal job you've done in this space. Well, I will expose you very soon, and I'm excited about doing that. Trust me. So, to get the conversation started today, you know the usual. You know the way we do it. If you want to be part of the conversation, you can either raise your hand and I'll mute you, or you just drop your comments in the. You drop your comment for us in the chat box. Also, you know how we do it. We have our different sessions. There's also the session where we get to play a game, and whoever wins gets a gift card from courtesy of Tech Advisory. So again, we're going to get into the conversation without wasting much of our time. So Boye, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to come to you. Also, that's because of the amazing job you've done in this space. So, Boye, for a start, to my 5-year-old self, how do you break down the concept of digital identity? Boy, can you confirm if you can hear me? Maybe
Yes,
you're muted.
Yes,
Okay.
I can. I'm always guilty of talking and then being muted. So if I'm going to define digital identity, I mean, there are many ways in which I've personally defined it over the years, depending on the kind of audience you are talking to. You can have a simplistic definition in terms of what people can relate to, and you can have maybe like a textbook definition. So let me start from what I think is like a textbook definition. Then I'll come back to what I think is a layman's definition. We can say digital identity is a set of electronically captured and stored attributes and credentials that can uniquely identify a person, that individualize a person in a computer-based environment. Of course, that is more of a textbook definition, but if I want to bring it to just like you said, a 5-year-old child of what digital identity is, then I would like to relate it to things that we are already familiar with in terms of our experiences as Africans. In many African countries today, our voter's card is some form of digital identity. Even our SIM cards are now some forms of digital identification, and a lot of our social media credentials as well, including even our digital footprints, for some people to driver's license and all of that. But I love to also break it down into three types of digital identity, which I found very interesting because of what it means to different audiences. And I love to start from the kind of the identity that is given to us by the government. So every type of digital identity I've spoken about, whether driver's license, whether national ID cards or our SIM cards, are more like a kind of identity that has been provided for us by the government. So it is identification as provided by maybe the authority. But there's also a type of digital identity I like to talk about, which is what I call self-sovereign identity, which is a very interesting one because by the definition or by the name, it shows that you have total control over it. Now, why I love this other type of identity is that it gives you the control of your own identity. And the easiest example of that is our social media credentials. A lot of people are like millionaires on their Instagram page, for example. They might be squatting in real life. A lot of people are activists on their Twitter handle, and in real life, they might be, bootlickers, ass lickers, or whatever you want to call it. So that kind of digital identification kind of give people the leverage or the latitude to kind of define how they want to be seen or how they want to be known. So that's why I call it my favorite definition. Of course, there's also the digital identity that I try to define with respect to digital footprints that we leave online when we browse the internet and all of that, because we leave a trace, something that link back to us. That's also some type of digital identity. But but no, in terms of this conversation we are having, when we talk about digital identity, we are talking basically about the kind of identification that gives us a unique, that allows us to be identified uniquely without confusion, without anybody thinking we are who we are not, like the self-sovereign identity that I spoke about. But I just thought it's good if I gave such an overview so that we have different perspective to it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Boye, for that particular intervention and breaking down the concepts. And I'm going to come back to you on why we say digital identity is actually something very important. But before I do that, Lucian, I'm going to come to you now. In Nigeria, we have a situation where when it comes to things around identity or registration with government agency, you have multiple government agencies um, capturing the same information, putting it in, issuing you an ID. Then you go to another government agency, you have to do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to come to you now and quickly, if that's the experience in Kenya as well, and if that's the experience, or if that's not the experience, or it's a different experience, um, what do you think about government obsession with personal data of citizens? What will be your take on that?
Okay, we have a similar arrangement in Kenya. We have different data points on us. We have the immigration office, which has our national identity details and also our passport. We also have the National Health Fund, which has our health details, which is similar to our national ID again. We also have our social security number, which is tied to our pensions. Again, you need your national ID to do so. So I think the obsession would be the need to control what we're doing. They want to know what we're up to at all times. And I'll use China as an example. I think that's where we see surveillance happening a lot. Recently, I came across a BBC report where apparently I don't know how to pronounce this correctly, but I would just go ahead and do it. I think it's called the Uyghur section of China, where majority of them.
Nobody's taking your head for not pronouncing it correctly.
So turns out the Chinese government has now placed QR codes on their doorsteps. So every single time a police would be patrolling, you'd see them scanning, and they would be able to know how many times this particular person has prayed and the number of residents in that house. So for me, I think the obsession is just knowing what their citizens are up to. Another scenario is in Kenya again. Recently, our government has decided to amend a 50-year-old act that has not been in, I don't know if it was in operation or not, but it's just one of those things that we no longer consider relevant. So it's called the Official Secrets Act. And what they did is they said that the amendment is basically stating that whoever owns a mobile device will be forced to give out information on a person who is deemed to be of national interest or is posing a national threat to the state. So it goes back basically to surveillance, I would say. That's the main obsession, surveillance.
Thank you, Lucian. And Victor, I'm going to come to you quickly. I've seen you in time past let me use the word rant about the government obsession with collecting data without necessarily guaranteeing sufficient safeguard for that data itself. I'm going to come to you quickly now, Victoria. What's your take around a lot of data points that the government has on citizens, and also the hunger to actually get more? And why I'm saying this is because, more recently, there's a thing around integrating your national identification number to, and that's been aside the fact that there's been a whole lot of risk around going physically to do some of these things due to the prevailing pandemic. But more importantly is also because this is an ID that the government has already, but you're asking us to bring something to verify something that you have before you can integrate something that you already have. So quickly.
They want us to bring something they already have, to confirm with something they have, to integrate into something they have.
I'll just leave you to go ahead. So go ahead, please.
So one thing I noticed about this digital identity that it deals with a lot of, it basically runs on personal information. So we have to take data protection and privacy concerns into consideration. We're supposed to look at a system where there's data protection by default and data protection by design. But we're not even sure if there's any assessment whatsoever about, okay, what risk do these things pose? What can happen? We're not sure of the security put in place. We are really not sure of anything. And we discovered that there's this proliferation of data across various areas. It's like one government, and you have to bring the same thing. Okay, you bring when you are registering for NIN, or when you want to register for the NIN, you use your BVN. And then why just not, when you want to register for your SIM, you do this and do that. But I'm like, why do I have to do this thing over and over again? Now there's a database with this person, with this person, with this person, with this person. So there are various points where a simple attack can lead to like a massive breach. It could be with immigrations, it could be with, there's the TIN too, let's not forget the tax, whatever number. There's TIN, there is SIM registration, there is NIN, we have the BVN, you do your voters registration, you do driver's license, and you do it over and over and over again. And there are so many issues, because when it was just paper, there's a limit to which you can copy paper. But now that it's digital, it's easy to like move the data. The data is more susceptible to breach. One single attack and you have millions of files. Like I read up somewhere where they compared the Pentagon papers with the Panama papers. Now, Pentagon papers, which was like ages ago, they were like papers, 7,000 pages. But the Panama papers that got leaked, over 11 million files. So the risk is higher with digital identity. So there should be like a higher sense of responsibility, higher sense of care and carefulness on the part of the people collecting. But we've not seen a precedent of that kind of care from other areas. So when I see another point, like when they say we should link our SIM card to our NIN, I was like, again, like you have this, you are the same body, call yourselves together, put a call across and collect the data. Or let me just enter my fingerprint and what you have on me will come out, because my fingerprint is used for NIN, my fingerprint is used for BVN, and things like that. So we need to sit together. Another thing is that the government seems to be so far away. It's like they are not having conversation with stakeholders or experts who know how this system runs, to be able to guide them as to, okay, was there even the data protection impact assessment before we started collecting data? And there is sensitive personal information involved with digital identity. It's not just your name and general personal information. So there are so many data protection and privacy concerns this thing raises. And I am very concerned and very disturbed. I generally don't trust the government. I don't rant like Ridwan said. That is not very true. But okay, maybe I just finished ranting. But
You just did.
But I think we need to take this thing seriously. Now, also, it is easy to delete now that it is digital. It's not like you are shredding paper or you are burning. So deletion is easier, copying is easier, then it is centralized one way or the other. So the data of millions of people, digitization makes things easier, but it also makes it more risky. So there should be like a higher sense of care, higher responsibility with taking care of this data, and I'm not sure that has been put in place.
All right. Thank you, Victoria, for that insight. So, Norita, I'm going to come to you quickly now. But before I do that, we're going to take a poll quickly. You know how we do this every week. Go to this website, sli.do or slido.com. Use your Twitter username if you like, or something that we can easily sort of identify you with. When you get there, use this code F148, which will allow you to be able to participate in the poll. This is the short link to it, and also this is like the QR code, which takes you directly to the page. So we're running a poll currently, which I'm going to also share on the screen. I'm just going to allow this go up a bit before I share that. So Norita, I'm going to come to you now. Victoria has laid the background for some of the issues, some of the concerns that we have around digital identity, whether we're adopting this in the national sense or whether we're even speaking about the role of private players. I'm going to come to the role of private players pretty much later. You with a strong background in security, aside data protection, some of the data protection issues that Victoria has identified, what are other issues that we have when it comes to digital identity, national identity, foundational identity, whatever name we choose to call it? And I'm saying that also because sometimes last year there was a report about dump of millions of data of Nigerian citizens from NIMC that was actually available on the dark web. NIMC was quick to make a denial about the non-existence of that particular database. But beyond that, we also remember prior to this new ID management capturing in the past, there was a time where the Nigerian government used a French company, Sagem. Anyone that is an ancestor here, we know Sagem mobile phone those days. If you know Sagem mobile phone,
ancestor, no ancestor here. We are youngin.
So if you don't know Sagem mobile phone, you are pardoned. But if you know Sagem mobile phone, I'm picking quarrel with you because you're an ancestor. So Sagem came, did the capturing, but there was a contractual dispute with the NIMC then, which literally meant Sagem took the data to their base in France and never released the data to the Nigerian government. And what we're talking about a data that hosts a database that has over 50 million Nigerians data. That's putting it lightly. Hosted in the French territory by private company. Whether it's being mined, whatever it is that's been done to it right now, we don't know. So these are some of the issues that we have. So Norita, I'm going to come to you quickly. What are the other issues that you think? What are the other issues that you think that are connected to national identity program, whether in the digital sense or whatever form the country has chosen to adopt? And I was asking you to speak to this broadly without jurisdictional limitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ridwan. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, it's clear. I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. So, I mean, before I jump on that, I think I should just quickly touch a little bit as part of what Victoria had mentioned. And also, I think one thing I also like to do is basically to put some bit of analogies in place. I mean, hoping that it would help us understand a number of these things. So why I agree to the fact that, I mean, it's becoming too concerning when you have to go to different agencies and register, say, NIMC, FIRS for driver's license. So FIRS or which one again? The banks for BVN, FIRS 14 or tax identification number, a number of other agencies.
You see the state residency too. State governments do
residency. Yeah, all sorts. So it's actually not very different from what we have on the internet or virtually. I mean, so a number of us today, for every social media account we have, you'll find out that you probably have an identity on that social media account, maybe an ID, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or whatever it is. You also have across your emails, right? Maybe you have 2-3 different emails which you use, whether it's Gmail or Yahoo or whichever email. You'd also have the same thing across your internet banking or mobile banking and a number of other services which we use digitally. So it's typically the same thing. So the same way you register with, say, NIMC, you register with FIRS, you register with your bank, you register with, which ones again? I mean, and all sorts. It's the same way you register. I mean, it's just very similar to the way you register your digital identity across all these social media sites and some that are non-social media. But one thing that's been done across the internet today, and something which may probably would have seen around. So there's the concept of federated identity. And a number of organizations, for example, like Google does that, even Microsoft, where when you log on to Google, for example, today, you don't need to log on separately to, say, to open your Google Docs or to open your Gmail or to open your Google Excel or to even use your Google Calendar or use your Google Meet. It's the concept of federated identity that comes into play there. And you find out that today, even some companies, some virtual companies or some e-tech companies or tech companies have actually taken it a notch further, where you're signing to Google and you want to sign into that other website, it basically redirects you to actually sign in with your Google ID. you type in your ID and automatically opens the same thing for that particular website. You can actually use that website with your Google ID. I think it's nothing far from what Victoria is saying. And I think it's nothing different from what we should be doing as a country, but we need to understand the risk. So I've registered for NameC, or I've done my BVN. I don't need to necessarily go and register again for a tax identification number because you have my identity already. So what you need to do is the concept of federated identities. And you have a number of technologies that are used in place on the internet today for that. But back to the question that Ridwan asked, the issue of identity when it comes to security is basically founded on the basis of security as we know it today. It's always about the risk. The identity by yourself, I don't think there's a problem with identity by itself today. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because when we talk of identity by itself, without considering some other things, it's very, very vague. And that's the reason why I put that post in the chat group saying that on the internet today, I can be a cat behind the computer, nobody knows. Or it can actually be a dog behind the computer. Maybe I'm not even the one speaking right now. Who can verify that? Right? Maybe people who actually know the way I talk.
Can be an alien.
I can be an alien, exactly. So identity by itself cannot be taken within its own right by itself. You have to add some other things to it, right? That is when we now talk in security parlance, that we now talk about authentication. Because identity basically is just saying, I am this person, I am a cat, I am a dog, I am Nuruddin. But how do I prove that I'm actually Nuruddin? That's where authentication, verifying my identity, which is actually very, very important, beyond just who I say I am. Because anybody can take my identity, and that's where the concept of identity theft comes in. And the way to solve that issue of identity theft, which is actually the primary issue when it comes to digital ID today, aside from issues of inaccuracies and theft by inaccuracies. Theft is one of the key concerns when it comes to digital ID. People stealing other people's identity. And the way to curb that really is going back to that second means when it comes to security, focusing on the verification of that identity, focusing on this person has said that he is a cat. How am I able to verify that this person is a cat and not a dog? I have said that it is Nuruddin speaking at the end of this computer. How is everyone on this panel able to verify that it's actually I speaking? I think that by itself actually carries more weight than, and I stand to be corrected by the professors on ground like Lujane and Adeboye. I think that carries more weight than the ID itself, because until you're able to prove that, then the ID can be whoever it is on the internet. So the concern we face today really is as regards the theft of that ID, and the solution really is ensuring that you're able to authenticate or verify who actually owns that particular ID. I think it's a general concern across all countries and also across all organizations.
Okay. I said I was going to come to you about. Thank you for those useful insights being dropped in the chats box. Thank you very much for those very, very important contribution. We implore more people to also join the conversation. I'm running a second poll here, and for those of us who are probably resident in Nigeria currently, this one is particularly for us, just trying to get a feel or getting our opinion about what the government is currently trying to do with the mandatory SIM and NIN linkage. So where you did a very beautiful introduction about the concept of digital identity. So I'm going to ask you two questions now. Why is it so important? What are the risks inherent in a national or in this ID program? What are your, as someone who's working in the digital rights space, why have you been shouting so much that Jazeera actually have to pay attention to you? Because I read your interview on Al Jazeera. So why have you been shouting? Why have you been screaming lately about this whole identity thing? Why has it become so important? What are the risks inherent in them? So 2 questions: why is it important? And at the same time, what are the risks involved?
Thank you, Ridwan. I think these are very important questions because it was just what was going through my mind, and I didn't know that you were going to ask me those specific questions. But what I'm going to say, I think Nuruddin has spoken a lot about why digital ID is important. And on the part of the government too, if you look at the publicized reason for asking us to do whatever they're asking us to do, whether to link our national identity number to our SIM cards or to get a BVN and all of that. They've also talked about why these are necessary. It is just the fact that the possibility of being able to uniquely identify somebody comes with a lot of promises, such as it can help to fight crime, security issues. It can even help government's welfare program. I mean, during the COVID-19 lockdown, the government said they spent about, some billions of naira to, to support people. And we were asking, where are the people you supported? I think one of the things that digital ID can also do is can help government.
Did you get palliative? Did the palliative get to you?
I didn't get, and I think I qualify for such palliatives as well, because
come on, government can identify you, boy.
But this is the issue. So one of the arguments is that for government intervention in terms of welfareism or humanitarian intervention, when you have digital ID, it's easier to identify who are actually our citizens, and then use this as a basis for that unique identification and all of that. So those arguments are out there, but I don't like to dwell on the arguments, because the problem with those arguments is that it doesn't tell all the story. It doesn't tell all the story. It talks a lot about, in fact, I was reading an opinion piece earlier today by Gimba Kakanda, who was trying to defend the minister and the instruction that people should link their NIN and their SIM card. And he was making the argument that the security challenges that Nigeria has right now with respect to banditry, terrorism, cybercrime, and all of that, that this is necessary so that we'll be able to solve the problem. And this is very problematic when I see people make this argument, because it's a simplistic argument. It gives an assumption that this problem that we have, that the reason why we have them is because we don't have this unique identification that we can use to catch the criminal. It is absolute rubbish. It's not true. It's not true, because technology is not a magic wand that you wave at every problem and they disappear. It is not so. Even if technology is going to solve problem, it still depends a lot on the competence with which you deploy the technology. And that is the question we are not answering. We have a problem of incompetence. That is why in 2012, 2013, everybody was forced to go and do SIM registration. But if you lose your phone today, you guess what? They will ask you to go and get a court affidavit to prove that you are the owner of that SIM card. What rubbish is that? That is the incompetence I'm talking about. It is not enough to say.
You are getting angry. Be calming down. Go on, please. Sorry to interject.
Okay, I'll try and talk more gently and more casually. But what I'm trying to make is that these potentials are there, right? But it's not a given. It is not automatic that because you are going to force everybody to do new registration and link it with SIM card, then our problem will disappear. It's not true. The problem is that we have not approached this holistically. Whether you're talking in terms of digital identification, we have not approached it holistically. That's why we are here today. As of 2012, when everybody was being forced to register their SIM cards, NIPSI was already existing. NIPSI had been existing in 2007. But you guess what? Let me tell you something. It's not a secret anyway. When we were doing all those multiple biometric registration at immigration, at the banks, at the telcos and all of that, the reason we were having those multiple registration at that time was because it was business for some people. They were giving contracts to people to carry out those registrations. So nobody wanted to admit that as at that point in time, we should have integrated everything. We shouldn't have to do everything that we have done. Then in 2021, we are not talking about go and be linking this to that, go and link that. Come on, NIPSI started existing in 2007, for God's sake. In 2011, people were forced to go and register their SIM cards. Shortly after that, people were forced to get a bank verification number. So the point that I'm trying to make is that we have there is a failure to holistically look at this issue of digital identification. Then another issue in terms of risk I also want to speak about is that we also have to be very careful in terms of how much power you give to a regime or to a government that has shown tendency to have no regard for human rights, or that have shown tendency to clamp down on voices of opposition or activism, or dissent and all of that. Now, when governments are given so much power like that, you can be sure that that power will be used against civic liberty. So sometimes when you see some of us arguing against these things, it's not because we are unaware of the benefits that are inherent in it, but we are also aware of the very many risks that are inherent. Government will effectively use digital identification numbers or digital identification to go against people that are criticizing them. They will use it to go against people that have dissenting opinions, but they will not be efficient when it is time to use it to go against criminals, to go against people that are committing crime. That is where the problem is. And what are the safeguards that should have been put in place? For example, look at Nigeria today. Do you know, since when we're talking about data protection, when it comes to protecting the people, our leaders behave like ants. Then when it comes to bullying the citizens into action, they start roaring like lion, telling people that in 2 weeks, if you don't register, your line is going to be disconnected and all of that. I'm still looking for an opportunity to engage the minister on this matter, because I watched his interview on Channel TV the other day. I was so pissed watching the way he was, the way he was talking to the journalists in a condescending manner. I was really pissed off looking at him and blaming Nigerians for the entire rush and all of that is happening at the moment. And I'm like, you can't do this. You can't pretend like you don't know where we are coming from. You can't act as if the problem has always been about the citizens. A lot of times you go to registration centers, they will tell you they don't have light, they don't have power to do registration. They tell you they have network issues. So it's not like you have created an efficient system all the years for people to register. Someone like me, I was unable to register until one day that I was visiting the National Assembly to see a senator like that. And I saw that they had a VIP registration center within the premises of the Senate. I'm like, wow, okay. So I entered there and I'm like, I want to register. And they did the registration for me under 15, 20 minutes. But not everybody has that kind of privilege. And average Nigeria goes to a registration center, there's either no lights, network is either bad, or somebody's asking them to pay some money that they were not supposed to pay. So just for me to say one or two more things about the risk, another risk that we should also look out for is that discrimination. Discrimination is real, especially for the minorities. If you go to Kenya, for example, that's one of the issues they have in Kenya. Minority groups, they are using digital identity, this identification thing to discriminate against them. And it's a big deal there. As a matter of fact, I spoke with a professor who was doing a research on digital identification, registration in Nigeria, and she was telling me that already they are bringing in people from outside Nigeria who are not Nigerians to come and get the national identification number to register as Nigeria. So a lot of fraud, inefficiency are happening around this whole process that nobody is talking to or nobody's paying attention to, or at least government is not showing any sign of, or any interest in mitigating. But then it wants to make Nigerians feel that they were in the wrong for not linking their national identity number with their SIM cards and all of that. So this is where the problem is. We are dealing with a government that seems to project in terms of what is possible with digital identification number. But when you look back in terms of what has it done with previous efforts, what has it done with the BVN, what has it done with the SIM card? I will tell you one thing that the government has done efficiently with SIM cards and BVN. It has used it to target NSAS protesters. So these are some of the things that will also happen with digital identity. It will not only be used to fight criminal, it will be used to fight people who dare ask government questions, who dare criticize government, who dare take to the streets to protest. So these are the real issues that that are not being discussed at the fore, that are being relegated to the background as if they are not important. Yes, it can help to fight criminal too. It can help to trace a criminal, but that is not all the story. We have to tell all the stories so that we have the right attitude, right disposition to this whole thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Boy. Thank you for, I mean, I can literally feel your anger, and they are very, very valid concerns. I mean, I remember last year, I think it was around March last year, when we were having this same conversation. Was it at CC Hub or NG Hub or so? Same conversation, same problems, and somehow technology has not washed away all the problems, like you said. So, Logan, I'm going to come to you, and that's also because there are issues around discriminations against minority, some people who are not even being conferred with citizenship, who are considered stateless. And this is not just a problem that you see in Kenya, and this is also a problem you see in a country like Myanmar, where the Rohingyas are not being considered. They are literally stateless. They don't belong here. They don't belong in Bangladesh. They don't belong in Myanmar. And when you see a government like that adopts an identity program, you literally shut them out of social benefits. And that's one of so many problems that we encounter. But before I come to you, Lujane, to take that particular issue I've raised now and your concerns too about the intersection of digital identity and data protection. So those are like two questions for you. We're going to take a session very quickly. So is this Victoria or Nuruddin? Which of you is responsible for this, please?
Nuruddin.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ridwan. I think with respect to the meat which we're trying to bust today, like we do every time of the session, I think there's this one that says, I think it would also be good to have some bit of feedback on the chat group. Let's hear what you think about this before we go into the next slide to explain whether this is a myth or whether it's actually correct. So it says that you must report all data breaches and notify data subject always. So this is speaking to, for every organization that have a data breach. I think there's been some bit of session which we had, or maybe some discussion with Ridwan, either on Twitter or somewhere else, when we talk about what is a breach and what is not a breach, because people tend to have some bit of confusion as regards that. But we won't delve into that. So is this true? I think it would be good to have some bit of responses on the chat group as an organization.
So Nuruddin, while we're waiting for feedback from people in the chat box, I'm going to mention this. You know, I know there was a time we had this conversation around whether there is a distinction between a personal data breach or a security incident and all of those things. Why we're not yet to maybe create all those technical distinguish those things technically, but they're actually very distinct concept. But what I just want to add is, not every violation of your right to privacy is
a data breach.
Is a data breach. I mean, I like to say that a lot. Not every violation of, so you don't, if there's a violation, I mean, not every, even violation of your data protection rights, not every violation itself is a data breach. So we should be careful when using those words. So I can simply use CCTV to a public, I mean, a CCTV that is meant for my private residence, I can use it to monitor a public space. If your house is next to me, I'm probably be violating your privacy. And that's nothing like a data breach. Maybe if the recordings of the video now show you doing something because someone unlawfully have access to it, or maybe you illegitimately decide to push it out, we can start talking about one. But we have to make that distinction. So, Nuruddin, back to you, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you. I mean, I didn't want to get into that bit, but I think it's also important, like you said, to make those clarifications. And what you tend to find is people use the term very, very loosely to say there's a breach. So there can be a breach of the regulation. And basically what that means is that you are not fulfilling one of the conditions of the regulation. Say the regulation mandates you to do a DPIA before the processing of sensitive categories of data, and you're not doing that. I mean, that's a breach of the regulation. That doesn't mean there's been a data breach. You host some data online, and whether maliciously or accidentally, someone compromises that data and discloses that data on the public web. I mean, you can speak to that as a data breach. But there are also some kinds of breaches too when it comes to data protection and security. There's also the breach of trust, right? There's a breach of privacy. There's a security breach by itself. There's a network breach, all sorts of breaches. I mean, but you also, as much as possible, always need to contextualize it, put it in the right context. Don't just use data breach very, very loosely, because it can actually affect an organization. It could affect them and have some negative impact on them just by the slight use of these words if we don't use them appropriately. So I think we have some bit of feedback already. Let me see. So I think people are saying no, yeah. But then, Ridwan, please if you move on to the next slide. So absolutely, you don't have to report all data breaches to or notify the data subject. There are various instances when you need to notify the data subject, and there are instances that you don't have that obligation, or you don't need to actually notify the data subject. For risks that are related to people's rights and freedom, and they don't affect people's personal data on an high scale. I mean, so two things really. You need to look at the volume of the breach and also the impact on the data subject. For those that have high impact on the data subject, then you need to notify both the supervisory authority, permit me for using GDPR terms, for those people who are from EU that joined us. You have to notify NITDA. Permit me to use NITDA too. They are like the only regulatory authority we have right now. So you have to inform NITDA, and you also have to inform the data subject. And for those that don't impact the data subject, I mean, they have low impact on the data subject. And I think it's actually mandatory to notify the supervisory authority, and you're not obligated to actually notify the data subject. So I think that's it. I think that's enough clarity. So we need to be very careful, especially from NDPR millionaires, that say all data breaches, you have to inform the data subject.
So Victoria, quick teaser for you. If I'm meant to send you an email through BCC and I send it to you through CC, do I need to notify? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but quick one. What's your take on that? I know we don't have any guidance specifying all of those things yet, but can that be considered high risk?
Grade one, context. Is it in Nigeria or is it outside of Nigeria?
In Nigeria, please.
I would say that I should go to sleep on that.
All right, no problem. So, Lujane, we're back to you.
Could you please repeat the question, just so that I can answer it properly? You're on mute.
Thank you very much. That's what we get with Zoom. So, Boye mentioned the issue of discriminations against minorities, and these are some of the problems we've seen in Kenya, where some persons have been considered stateless. And this is a similar problem we also found in Myanmar, where the Rohingyas are not considered to be they are not considered to be a citizen in Myanmar, and they're also not considered to be a citizen in Bangladesh. So, away from that as well, I also want to get your take around the intersection of digital identity and data protection. And I want you to do that quickly. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm going to address this by using the example that Adiboye gave us around statelessness and the lack of identity generally. So when we have a scenario where digital identity systems have not taken into consideration certain privacy principles, we'll have a very subpar system that doesn't really consider the already existing historical injustices that are there, and it's just being built for the sake of it. So what will happen here is that the exclusionary trend that is already appearing in the already manual sort of identity process of getting your citizenship will then be replicated in the digital identity system. So the first intersection would be an improper design system. So if a system is not designed properly, then trust you me, discrimination will continue. The next intersection is when the system is centralized in nature. So it becomes a single point of truth. This is something you see being repeated even with us in Huduma number systems. So the government wants a system that can have all points of data on their citizens. So what that does is it just creates a scenario where this data can be easily hacked. And what will happen is this data will be breached, and then we'll have a scenario where, I don't know, my identity has been used by someone else that does not purport to be, who's obviously not me. Then another intersection would be data sharing across the government agencies. So which I think is a manual that is being read by both Kenyan and Nigerian governments. There's a lot of, I don't know, different points of data that's scattered everywhere. So when we have all of this into one place, there's going to be a high chance that they lack data governance. I mean, the fact that they can't seem to understand that we need just one point, data governance policies will not be put in place. So the chances of leakage will be very high. And what will happen is that we'll just have our data being sold to the highest bidder because our governments haven't taken the necessary steps to protect our data. I'll give an example of what happened just because of this particular thing. There was a blogger in Kenya that was apparently having a relationship with a high state official, and her passport information and flight details were leaked to one of these members of paparazzi. So what happened is it became like a hot thing on Instagram Live, and this guy was telling us where they went, and she actually, I don't know if it was her or the politician, but I'm pretty sure it was the politician. They went ahead and arrested this guy. So I'm seated at home looking at all this drama unfold, and I'm wondering, okay, so why are they arresting the paparazzi and not the immigration officer who had access to all of this data? And these are the problems with not taking into consideration privacy policy, privacy design principles when designing a digital identity system. And this also goes back to when the state is legislating these things. They need to sit down with the people who are able to guide them on, okay, this is what is needed for digital identity, and this is what you need to put in place. So yeah, those are the intersections. The intersections are just basically data sharing and the lack of data governance. There's also the centralization of this particular data and it being a high risk in terms of cybersecurity threats. And the other intersection is it would basically, the poor infrastructure would lead to more exclusion amongst the minorities, which would just be a disaster. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Lijen. Victor, I'm coming to you now. So now some of these risks have been identified, they've been pointed out from security point of view to humanitarian point of view to data protection point of view. So from a data protection point of view right now as well, what are the things I think if we have a rethink about, then our approach to issue of identity could be a bit different. Essentially, summary, what are your recommendations? What are the things we need to do differently? And before doing that, what is also missing from what I've seen from the NIMC is also the fact that you never hear things like data protection impact assessment being done when some of these programs are being carried out. Consequently, what you see is an hola, if that's the word, an hola. So, and I'm going to take you back, which I'm very sure it's something you're familiar with. A couple of months ago, there was a version of the quote unquote, they said the app was in a beta phase and was available on Google Play Store, that was available for download by everyone. And what happened then was if you enter NIN that's yours, you're likely going to get someone else's ID. Yeah. Literally, that was a big mess. Yeah, thank you very much. So whether it's data protection impact assessment that we need to do, which is something statutorily mandated, or whether it's an human rights impact assessment, which sort of also addresses other possible fundamental rights that could be impacted. What's your thought on this, and what do you think the NIMC is missing by not carrying out an impact assessment? And if they don't, why have they not made it public?
I don't think there was a data protection impact assessment because
I'm
this
just giving
has
them the
been
benefit of doubt.
no, because I know that people like to announce things that they do, like what things that make them look good. So if they do a data protection impact assessment, it makes them look compliant and competent. We would have heard. So I don't believe that happened, and it created quite a number of problems. You announced the launch of an app, and then you put it on Play Store for people to download, and then you came and say, oh, it wasn't supposed to be there, uninstall. After either after data and personal information has been exposed on large scale, people are taking screenshots that, oh, I entered my NIN and I got this and I got that. That was one of the problems. I wanted to say something about when it comes to digital identity, we should take on a proactive rather than reactive approach. Now, if there was like a data protection impact assessment, if they did something like data protection by design, data protection by default, privacy by default, these issues that accompany the app and other various loopholes we've had with digital identity in Nigeria would have been covered. They would have tested and checked. But because there was no data protection impact assessment, and it's very interesting because it is a sister body that came up with the idea that when you are dealing with this kind or this volume of personal information, you should have a certain kind of assessment to test the risk. So it's quite surprising that a body that wants to register 200 million Nigerians on a single platform, process and store their data, failed to carry out something like that. I don't know, it's wrong on the human right level, on the regulatory level. It doesn't even make any sense because you don't even know the kind of risk. I'm not sure when you don't do an impact assessment, you cannot determine the extent to which a breach will affect anybody. You can't determine the
Well,
extent of risk.
we're doing the Kogi State
You
governor's
can't
approach. If you don't
anything.
test, there will be no COVID.
Yes, if you don't test, you don't know how bad it can be. They say they say what you don't know will not kill you, which is not true in this instance. So one of the things, like I said, we should just take a proactive rather than reactive approach. You not think wait for things to go bad before you start acting. That's why I was saying something like data protection by design, privacy by design. You should embed privacy and data protection from when you are creating the system. It should not be an afterthought that say, and we've already done like a test for this thing, and then someone now later brings it on, like the NYSC issue, where they had printed the yearbook. Then probably someone told them that no, this is personal information. Then they created the consent form. When you want to collect the yearbook, you sign the consent form as an afterthought. It shouldn't be that. We should be proactive when it comes to things like this. Then there should be transparency, accountability. Well, okay, let's just take a look at the data protection principles. If that's what they are even going to run with, to a certain extent, there will be a more decent approach to the whole thing. There should be transparency and accountability. Then it should be user-centric. The whole thing should be user-centric, not government-centric. So when they are creating a system, it should be something that is easier for people to use. It should be about protecting the users, about creating ease with creating a digital identity or monitoring or managing one. There should be various legal controls put in place, technical controls put in place, because it's a big deal. It's a serious issue. If every Nigerian registers for this digital identity across all these platforms, let's say everybody gets a national identity, everybody above 18. But I was at a center when I was getting mine, and children actually got. So I don't think it's only people above 18. So if we put in all these measures, we put in these various measures and take up a proactive approach instead of one that is reactive, that only when things are now wrong, we now begin to run helter-skelter. It will be too late by then. The data is already on the black web, is already on the dark web. It's already available. The problem has happened. Everything has gone wrong already. If it is at the point of a breach that we begin to react with policies. So the government should this time around not play catch up. We should not play catch up. We cannot afford to play catch up, because digital identity is not just dealing with personal information. It deals with sensitive personal information. Various things can go wrong. Identity theft, discrimination and harassment, different kind of things can come out of it. So I think just taking a proactive approach, incorporating, performing something as simple as don't let me say simple, basic, as a data protection impact assessment. Let them follow the law. If it's the NDPR we want to run with, let them follow the NDPR. In fact, let's start with that. Let them follow the NDPR and the guideline for public institutions. Let's run with that first, and let's see how it works. Then maybe we can raise the standard. For now, there is no standard, and we need to create one.
All right. Thank you, Victoria. So, I mean, we've been getting really interesting comments from the comment section. Thank you very much, everyone. Ishak, Dr. Simi, and I'm going to, in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to take it back to the audience for a while, for the next 5 minutes. So, Dr. Simi and Larry Shoriel, I'm wondering if you want to contribute, or if there's anyone that wants to say something. Just give me a thumbs up, then I'll mute you.
Just to add to what Victoria, we're waiting for that, to add to what Victoria had said. You know, when that NIMSI stuff came out, and they came out with the rebuttal saying that we should not listen to unauthorized sources and all that. I had a discussion with my good friend Pat Walsh, and he actually wrote to NIMSI. I mean, he did the basic analysis of the NIM. Even before that came out, he did analysis of NIMSI app, and he actually wrote to NIMSI and also wrote to NITDA. I'm hoping that maybe sometime, maybe this week, we'll get a feedback from NITDA, because I was actually, he copied me one of those emails, but we are still waiting for that response to NITDA. I mean, citing a number of the NITDA requirements and the breach of those requirements by the app that NIMSI, the test app, sorry, I shouldn't say the app, the test app that NIMSI provided on their on the Play Store. I mean, so I think it's also important, and I think it's something which has sort of shown, and we've reiterated all through these conversations. I think why private organizations are being held to so much accounts when it comes to things related to data protection, digital identity, I think the same ought to also be demanded from government MDAs and also government agencies. I'm not sure that they are getting their fair share of the kind of heat that some of these regulators put on private organizations. I think it would be good for us to start from there.
All right. Thank you, Nuruddin. So, Dr. Simi, let's have you. Briefly, please.
Thank you very much. And this is something that has been very, very interesting, especially from a developed economic point of view, obviously in the UK here. Just going through this NIMSI app, which is a very interesting name, I am beginning to liken it with our own NHS app here in the UK. And we're looking at it obviously from the current pandemic. We now have a app, and there's a lot of discrepancies that this app has sort of generated in terms of digital technologies and digital identity, which I think is relevant to what you said here today. And that's why I'm a bit concerned as to the implications of this app, this NIMC app, and what it would do in terms of identity. I don't know if a DPIA was conducted before this app was launched. If it was, has it been made public? Was there any consultation regarding it? And what would be the implications long term, you know, for this, because we do not know how this will pan out. So take, for example, in the UK here, the app itself that we have here that everybody's been encouraged to download, there's a lot of issues that comes to play for minorities like us, obviously Blacks, so Black and other minority ethnic groups. So it is very interesting to see whether in future this would be an app that will sort of provide some surveillance issues where you go for a job and they have to check, you know, this app and see what area you come from. A lot of interactions that the app would have might be detrimental to us. So is that the case in Nigeria? I'm not really sure. You know, these interactions, having a centralized system might be a good way to go, but then again, how secure is the centralized system and what might be the implications of that even for Nigerians in itself, looking at middle class and, you know, rich, poor, and it's quite interesting to just see. But these are just questions I have that I don't know whether, you know, anybody might be able to shed any light on, but it will be useful to see how this would be played out in future.
Thank you, Dr. Tiffany, for that very concise and short one. Larry, can we have it?
Yes, thank you very much. The only thing I wanted to add is that the NDPR has been in existence for, I think, about maybe 2 years or more now. But I think we will never really see like real enforcement of the NDPR in the absence of real political interest that is backing this regulation, or if there's an act in the end, because it will just be like we are paying lip service to data protection and there will be no serious consequences for violations of their privacy. I mean, so far, I haven't heard of any fine proceedings or anything like that. And I'm just looking forward to development of that pace, but I think it would, before that would happen, there would need to be substantial political backing to these data protection regulations in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much. Like I said again, if you have anyone, if I have anyone else that want to drop their $1, not 10 cents or 1 cent this time around, so that would be nice. In reacting to what you raised about fine, NIDA in their performance report last year actually announced that they fined the LIRS, that's Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, ₦1 million for that data breach they suffered, or when they created a platform that anyone else could actually access third-party information from. So now, Victoria, over to you, please. Victoria.
Yeah?
Yeah, over to you, please. The next session.
Game on. Yes, now we're going to play a game. We're playing a game. I think we've played this over and over. I get to give you a definition of a term, and then you tell me what you think it is. Today's one is like really, really fun. And I think some of us will have an issue with the term, but we'll discuss that subsequently. So an example is the code you get on your phone from the internet, maybe for your bank. When I was in school, we got it for registration and payment of fees. The answer is two-factor authentication. So now let's move to the question. That would be me, us, a community, and a lot of folks who are day workers or who don't necessarily prance around in hoodies all the time. We are the good folks, and according to Hollywood, we can stop ships, take control of power stations, and see aliens using an Apple mark apparently. The media and the marketing folks in our industry don't get those particular memos. We are the thinkers, the wizards, the witches, and warlocks of the digital age. Who are we? Let me see. I see
That sounds
answers
like a
already
Chinese
coming
phone data.
in. Pirate. That's one way to see it.
No, digital pirates, right?
Yeah, from the chat room. Pirates, hackers, ethical hackers. I'm still waiting for some answers to come in. Hackers. Are you sure? Nobody has a contrary opinion. We're all saying hackers, anonymous.
Yeah, this actually sounds like a statement Anonymous will make. They will make in a video. I mean,
Yeah,
a script.
Victor. Me trolling? No, I don't do that. As a good person, I don't do that. Let's have the answer. Please read one.
All right.
Hackers. We have too many scholars and geniuses in this webinar.
Maybe they are just one.
So yes, hackers. I thought we'll have the issue of, because I thought we have the white hat, black hat issues, and we have to address that, but we don't have
I mean,
that
we saw
issue.
someone put out ethical hackers there.
Yes, instead of saying a white hat or a black hat. So the answer is hackers. And we all got it. Almost all of us got it right. Some people were more specific. Like I like anonymous. It's different. It's unique. So we all got it right. Hackers.
So, boy, I'm going to come to you again. So, couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, the Singaporean government announced. Hey, thank you, Dr. Simi, for attending. Thank you very much. So, a couple of days ago, the Singaporean government announced that its COVID-19 app, the data collected from the contact tracing app, will now be shared with law enforcement authorities. And this is like a trend we continue to see from so many governments. There have been cases from a couple of governments, more specifically the Australian government, trying to legislate around the issue of backdoor encryption, for example, which is saying service providers or product developers who are embedding encryption into their product or services, for example, should allow backdoor encryption for law enforcement. And of course, we know how some of the problems with these issues. So the question I'm asking you now, it's me asking you to channel the prophet in you now. If you do your evil impact assessment, let me go from DPI that Victoria has overflowed today. If you do your evil impact assessment, where is the next frontier for government proliferation or government invasion of privacy and citizens' data protection right? And I'm going to get this across to everyone. Do your evil impact assessment, and what's the next frontier for privacy violation? Boy, that's for you.
Oh, sorry, I didn't get the question. What's the word for privacy?
Really good. So I was saying that we've seen announcement from the Singaporean government during the week where it said the COVID contract tracing app, the data from the contract tracing app will now be linked, will be shared with law enforcement agencies, and which was not what citizens were told. And also, if you pay attention to what's happening in Singapore, the contract tracing app was made mandatory. So also, if you look at what's happening in Australia, the Australian government is trying to legislate around mandatory backdoor encryption on products, services, and that's for providers who embed encryption into their product, saying you have to leave a backdoor there for us so we can come in. Knowing fully well how government can abuse these things. So I'm putting it to you now, and I'm saying, if you do your own evil impact assessment, if there's anything like that, what will you say? And I'm asking you to channel the prophet in you right now. What will you say is the next frontier for government violation of data protection, or let's say even privacy rights? Just a quick reaction from you.
As a matter of fact, I just authored an article with for the Global Voices on that very specific question, especially around the contact tracing app, COVID-19 and all of that. So it is more or less empowering the Nigerian surveillance state. It is what it is. Government is going to become more empowered to carry out surveillance. Government already does surveillance, but I think all of this would then give government more power to carry out surveillance. So the good thing is that I think when it comes to COVID-19, Nigeria did not really strategically, do a lot of contact tracing. But in our own case now, what we are doing is digital identity, massive drive for digital identity registration and all of that. And this is where it is going. It is just one of those things that is required to create a police state to strengthen the ability of the Nigerian government for surveillance. We are empowering the Nigerian government its surveillance capacity, and we are building the Nigerian surveillance state. I can't wait for the article to be published. I wrote very well about this, and I look forward to it. I look forward to how we're going to navigate all of that. But 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to have a government that has like Big Brother. We're going to have the original Big Brother, not the one we watch on DSTV, who can see everyone, who would leverage all this data that it is gathering, who will leverage it to. And when I say government, I like to quickly say this: that don't think APC, don't think PDP. Just think Aso Rock. Anybody who is there, we use it because what is it called now? What are they called? Like Museveni. What are all these people that refuse to leave power? What are they called again?
Dictators.
Dictators are not born; they were made. And this is how you create environment that makes dictators. When you begin to give them everything that will make it possible for them to be dictators. It's easier to criticize government now because you can hide behind anonymity and expose government and all of that. All of that will be a thing of the past. But one hope, or one thing that gives me hope, is that there is a lot of inefficiency in government. So I don't trust the government will even be able to efficiently leverage the surveillance power that it is getting through this biometric data capturing and synergy, the synergy, putting everything together and all of that, and trying to force everybody to have a NIN and have it linked with their mobile number and their bank account. That's the only hope I have. The hope that we don't really have a competent government, and because of that, even if it has all these tools, it might not be able to efficiently use it. But by that, I think that we are looking at a future whereby government is going to leverage this a lot, and it's going to affect even the plurality of our democracy a lot, because whichever government that is in power, that that is awake to this potential, we use it a lot to hold on to power for a very long time. And these are the things that I want us to pay a lot of attention to, and not just get carried away by the bubble of, when you wave, once we have digital identity, they will solve Boko Haram crisis and all of that. All of that is just a promise of El Dorado, which will barely happen if we don't become efficient in how we govern, in how we approach security, in how we leverage technology. Those problems they will exist. But from over the years, what we have seen is that when it comes to issues of power, retaining power, political interest, government don't joke with all of that. That's where you can see their efficiency most. So they are going to leverage all these things to their advantage, and activism will become a more difficult work for anybody to do, to be able to loudly speak against government and all of that, because they will find you anyways.
All right. Thank you very much, Boye, for your evil impact assessment. So, Lojane, I'm going to come to you now. If you do your own evil impact assessment, what's the next frontier for privacy violation or data or human rights violation? Or let me just say, let's focus on data protection and privacy as a right. What's the next frontier for you?
Other than what Adeboye has said, I think one thing I'd be scared of is microchips. I'll not have privacy even in my brain. I think I'm not very comfortable with that. I don't know when that technology will be out there, but Elon Musk is already trying it. But it's possible that they'll be able to read my brain. I'm not sure if that's what I want. So yeah, maybe that will be 5 years, 10 years from now, but still, it could be an area which would create a murky scenario in matters data interpretation, I guess.
And I'm throwing this open to everyone else on the session. So drop it in the chat box. Ibube, everybody, Ishaq, if you do your evil impact assessment, what's the next frontier? So Victoria, I'm going to come to you now. I know this is something you'll be interested in. Victoria, can you hear me?
My mic was on mute and I've been talking. Yeah, I can.
Sorry about that.
So I'm saying, I think it will be Big Brother, like having a Big Brother watching us. But I'm actually at government aside. Like, we know that the government is the government, but I'm very concerned also about big techs and corporations being Big Brother and going to bed with the government because they mutually benefit from each other. So because it's easier for them. For example, Google is like probably the perfect Big Brother in this instance because we have everything synced: my calendar, my mail, my docs, now my fitness app, everything together all in one. My keyboard, for those that use Google keyboard. So when you are typing, when you are typing in any other app, they still get to see what you are doing. So I'm scared of big corporations in conjunction and a mutually beneficial relationship with the government, giving us the Big Brother experience that was written about by the author of Animal Farm, George Orwell. I think it's George Orwell.
Yeah, that's correct. All right, Nuruddin, quickly from you, your evil impact assessment.
Sorry, Ridwan, can you come again, please? I missed out on.
Okay. So what I was saying is, if you do your evil impact assessment now, what would you say will be the next frontier for privacy violation?
Sorry, say that again. If you do?
Evil impact assessment. What would you say will be the next frontier for privacy violation? And I need to do that quickly so we can get into other sessions.
I mean, I really can't tell. I mean, but I think for me, basically, the focus really, even though people say that, I mean, maybe it's not actually crystal clear, or maybe it's not even specified in every regulation or requirements of some of the regulations. I think one thing that actually comes very close to my heart really is, I mean, some of the issues that Boye had mentioned, things around data ethics, transparency, and accountability. So you'd find accountability being mentioned in those regulations or several regulations, but then I don't think that we give it the same, we amplify it as much as we amplify some of the other principles or some of the other requirements. So,
like consent.
Please, I'm not going to use that to mention it in this session today. So I don't think we have things like that. So key for me, aside from people, so I would term all those things as violations, and we can see that's actually very clear. So taking a similar look at what happened with WhatsApp recently, I think it boils down to not only their practices, but things around transparency and ethics. So I think those are far more important than some of the other principles which we spend so much time on, value, ethics, and transparency. All
right, without taking a break, can you just run us through the quick and dirty this week?
Okay, so the quick and dirty this week, to make this real fast, this is courtesy of whatever is trending on Twitter. I think this week we've had, and I hate to do this really well, please. I hate to talk about the government or government agencies, but then I have no option. Because I'm hoping to be the DG of one of the MDAs one day.
No, stop you because politics always shifts from right to left.
All right, so we had this trending on Twitter this week, and I decided to create this picture from someone who shared this, referencing what happened in the Sorosoke movement.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and also the pigeons speaking to each other, and I mean, refusing to fly on the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. I mean, shout out to members of our armed forces. But also speaks to what I've just recently said as regards ethics. I mean, I wasn't even sure that we're going to talk about this now. It's always good for every organization to, as much as possible, be transparent. I feel like the NIMSI app wouldn't have gone that way if they've been transparent as regards what they've done and what they are doing. There's no island of knowledge. The biggest source of knowledge today is to actually crowdsource and to crowdsource information. You can never go wrong with that. Absolutely. I feel like institutions are more transparent with respect to their use of data. They show core value with respect to their principles. They hold themselves accountable, even beyond what the regulations have said. I think people will, to some extent, reason with them. So it's a case of, and I try to use this as examples as much as possible. It's a case of Apple versus WhatsApp, for example. To some extent, you could see that one of those companies shows a bit of transparency with respect to what they do with ethics, trust, privacy, and you can't find that from the other party. I mean, I'm not naming names. We can make those decisions ourselves on which one is transparent and which one is not. Or you find with organizations that are not transparent, or they don't hold themselves accountable, or they have some very concerning use or concerning practice as regards to their use of people's personal data. If they are still doing that, I think they should be worried, because people will speak to each other, people will find out things, and they will talk to other data subjects. And when they talk, as much as possible, what you'll be finding out that you'll be expecting class actions, you'll be expecting reports to regulatory authorities, and that's basically what we've seen over the past week with what is happening with Facebook and its subsidiary companies. All right, Regan.
All right, thank you, Nuruddin, for that. I have specific questions, which is like my final questions to everyone. And I'm going to ask us to do this very quickly in like a minute, because we're almost running out of time and we still have the quiz to go. So, Boye, I'm going to start with you. Increasingly, we are seeing more participation for private players in the digital identity space in Nigeria. Outside Nigeria, we've got digital identity companies like Yoti that pride themselves on being able to provide identity to people across payment and so many other things. The media is big in other parts of the world. We've also got so many of the traditional tech companies already doing some of these things already. In Nigeria, I mean, I stumbled on a company that is that prides itself on being able to provide using artificial intelligence, using your digital identity, and also facial recognition technology. I'm not going to name names. I mean, that's not the purpose here. But I've seen that, and for me, that's like a big one for me. Currently, we're doing a bit of technical analysis behind doors to see beyond their practice to see what's really been done there. So I'm going to come to you now. And in 1 minute, I know we don't ever have enough time to discuss these issues, but what's your take on the role of private players in that same space? Should we be scared? Should we feel confident? Thank you.
I think, let me be sure that my audio is on. Yeah, so there are quite a number of them. You don't want to mention me, I will mention them. One is Verify Me. You can check out Verify Me, who are using this same name. They're using it to do more like a KYC, like a digital KYC.
Sorry, but I want to cut in. Your interview to Al Jazeera, I know, was actually about a particular company. So yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's not just verifying. I think NIMSI has licensed, this is one of the issues I was talking about. NIMSI has licensed some companies, more than, I can't remember the number of companies, but they've licensed a number of companies that are going
about 70 of them thereabouts, or is it 100 and something? I can't remember, but I know it included the telecoms companies too.
Exactly. And many of them are going to be leveraging this data that NIMSI is collecting and that's one of the big issues that earlier, some of the participants were speaking in terms of whether NIMSI had conducted privacy impact assessment or risk assessment and all of that. So even NIMSI, the NIMSI that is the licensing other organization, if they have not done their part in that regard, this other organization, what assessment was done in terms of their data protection and their ability to ensure data protection and to ensure the security of this data. For me, I find it worrying that even while we have not even gotten the registration right, our government have already started doing business with this data. They've already given it to private agency, private companies to do business with it. And there is an article I want to share on the chat box for people who might be interested to just go through it and also get to know about this a bit more and the risk inherent. But the point I just want to quickly make because of time is that it's worrying that there is a lot of things, that there is a lot of private players that has been brought into the system. This data already been shared with private players, even though we have not been given, even though we don't have enough confidence that there is enough safeguard in terms of security or even adherence to the minimal data protection framework that exists in Nigeria. So it's so unfortunate.
Thank you, Boye, for keeping it short. Lucian, I'm going to come to you now. And my question to you is, what would be your recommendation? And quickly, what would be your recommendation, or what's an idea of a good ID? Can you hear me, Lucian?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Right.
I think my recommendation to what a good idea would be is one that the individual has control over and can easily trust. So the moment you attach ultimatums to citizens rolling out or rather applying for this particular digital identity identifiers, it would create a sort of mistrust. So for me, it would be an ID that is easily an ID that can be controlled by the citizen, an ID that is secure, and an ID that is inclusive. So that's what I would look at in terms of what a good ID is.
Thank you very much for that, Lucian. Victoria, I'm coming to you now. And my question to you is, you've pointed out so many issues, dragged too many people today that we've lost count. But my question to you specifically is, in introspect, if the government is going to do things differently, what are those things that you think they could have done differently? And I also want you to also touch on the role of the increased role of private players being licensed and having this data in their hand. And I'm going to say this to you because also, if you look at some of these private companies, you look at the privacy notice, for example, that SA can't pass the transparency test. So so two things. In 30 seconds, tell me your fears. In 30 seconds, tell me what they should do differently.
As regards to private players, I can't seem to make up my mind because I discovered that generally the private sector are usually more efficient and they are held to a higher standard than public players. So from that angle, it seems it's better if we have their data in their hands because they are held to a higher standard of accountability. But again, the issue with capitalism or data capitalism also comes to play. So I can't seem to make a decision or create a balance in my mind if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But currently, government is both unaccountable, inefficient, and not trustworthy. So I can't seem to make a decision as regards the pros and the cons of having private players in this sector.
Boye has told us today that being inefficient could be a good thing too.
But we say that they are not, when they want to be efficient, they trust people and find people. That's the one thing I've noticed, that people have been found in this country. Before, I thought in Nigeria nobody can find you, but they fished people out with some of these things they have, their surveillance and their databases that they have, and they use them to fish people out. So what if they become efficient someday? They have the tools at their disposal. when they become, if they ever choose to become efficient.
All right. All right. So quick one. Can you just walk us through the privacy field for this week quickly too?
I have nothing to hide. I've actually had this discussion before, and the person was like, I really don't care. Like, I don't care much, and there's really nothing I can do about it. And I use Apple devices, I use an iPhone, I use a Mac, I use an iPad. So it's relatively safe. I'm safe. And even if I'm not safe, I don't care. I have nothing to hide. I don't go to shady websites, and I just laughed that day because I'm like, okay, this is something that goes across board. There are people believe that because they don't do anything shady, privacy is not their business, and there are a lot of things wrong with that statement because one, it's like equating privacy with secrecy. You don't give out your BVN to everybody on the road, not because you are shady. Or if I ask with one, can I have your the number on your ATM card, the expiry date, the CVV, and your PIN? Will you give me? You won't give me, not because you have something to hide, but because it is your information. You are protecting something that belongs to you, not necessarily because you are doing something bad or shady with it. Another thing is privacy is a human right, just like right to life. You don't have to justify your right to life that, oh, I have a right to be alive because I have a bright future. You don't need to give a reason to you exercise or to take hold of your right to life or your right to freedom of speech. You don't have to justify all these rights. So why do you have to justify privacy? Like you have to, why are you trying to be private? What are you hiding? So let me just ask a random question. Do you have a curtain in your house? Do you draw your blinds? Why do you have a door? Okay, when you are going to the bathroom, there's this general, it's a natural instinctive feeling to close the door. Like right now, if I tell you that there's a recording device under your table somewhere, are you comfortable with it? It's not because you are a criminal or something. And two, when there's an invasion of privacy, it's a real issue that affects real people. Things like identity theft, social engineering, we have harassment, we have various things that can flow out of a problematic privacy regime. So people should be more concerned whether or not they have something to hide. It doesn't have anything to do with having something to hide or being clean and being unclean. There was a movie somewhere and some people were arrested, and the people arrested said, you can't keep us here for long, we have done nothing wrong. And then the arresting authority said, it won't take us long to find a crime that you have committed before. We can easily find one if we just look through. Maybe it's illegal download of music that they will just catch you for. So even if you claim you have nothing to hide, which is most likely not true, everybody probably has something to hide from somebody or certain people. But apart from that, let's even put that aside. It is not a valid argument that you have to justify privacy, and the only reason why you want your privacy is because you are hiding something. It is not even an intelligent argument. It is not right, it's not correct, and it doesn't make sense because you won't be comfortable if I say, okay, I want to take a picture of you naked and have all the rights to hold your naked picture and show everybody. You say I'm invading your privacy, but what are you hiding? In that instance, you see that the issue is not having something to hide, like a criminal hiding thing, but you are protecting information, you are protecting certain things from exposure. So it's one massive privacy field. People have this funny apathy towards privacy, like, I want my privacy, and it becomes an issue because it means you are doing something wrong or doing something shady.
All right, Ridwan, you muted.
I said, oh, Victoria, thank you very much. I don't think anyone could have said that better. I like the gems you dropped, and I think a lot of people agreed with you in the comment section. Thank you, Boye, for sharing that quote too. saying privacy should not matter if I have nothing to hide is like saying freedom of expression shouldn't matter. It's like saying freedom of expression shouldn't matter if
Or
I don't have
saying
to say.
the right to like own property, like under Nigerian constitution, should
Yeah,
not matter
exactly.
now because I have no money.
Because I'm broke. Because I'm a member of SMAN. So, so I mean, these are like really cardinal issues. But quickly, we're going to run into the quiz, and we'll do that. We'll do the 2 recommendation, and we'll close it. So I'm pleading with us to give us more. I mean, these are issues that takes a very long time to really get into. So we'll do the quiz quickly, and we do the quiz quickly. We do the 2 recommendation, and we'll call it a day. So again, join this using the code. Be part of the quiz. Use your preferably your Twitter username, so it's easy for us to identify you. If you're the winner this week, you get a gift card courtesy of Tech Hub Advisory. So I'll give us like a few minutes to do that, so we can get right into the quiz. Thank you. Wow. Okay, there it is. That's it for this week. Congratulations. I can't pronounce this name. Mike Quill. Congratulations. You can reach out to us through our Twitter handle so we can get across to you. Thank you very much for being part of this. Without wasting much of our time, we'll get into the 2 requirements, the 2 recommendations for this week. Reading, if you can do this quickly. Reading. Okay. All right. Okay. I guess you're muted.
So, I was. I think our tool for this week is a Proton email. Some of the promises that we've heard over and over this week around end-to-end encryption, sometimes you see it as E2E. I mean, this particular email service actually provides that. So you have end-to-end encryption. Basically, what that means is there's internal encryption from the point of sending your message to the point of receipt. So it's actually encrypted end-to-end, which means that your message in transit is actually being protected. I mean, whatever happens to when it gets on your phone, I mean, that's your business, sort of, if someone takes your phone and reads the message. But it's actually protected end-to-end. There's also the encryption, the security. You can actually create an anonymous email, and more importantly, it's actually open source, and it's also free. You don't have to pay for it. I mean, compared to some of those other email service providers where you're not sure of what actually happens to your email, and also some of them could actually be, what's the right word? Is this subpoenaed to, I can't remember what the word is.
If your email service provider is capable of reading your emails,
Yes, and also if government writes to them that they actually want your email. I mean, so some of this email, Proton email, for example, is actually free from all those stuff. It's actually free, available on iOS and also Google Play Store. But then there are also some other ones, Discord, Startmail, and also Twitter Nota.
So maybe one thing to also add is also because Proton Mail is based in Switzerland, which has arguably one of the strongest data protection laws in the world. So all those government demand thing, I mean, they are like a leader when it comes to that. So at this point, we have to draw a curtain. We've taken your time a lot today. Thank you everyone who joined. Thank you everyone who contributed to the conversation. Ibube, Chidima, Bumi, Ife, Francis, Isha, Jane, Larry, Michael, Fikayo, Noe, Rodia, most of other people that I can't mention. And thank you to my panelists as well. Do you want to say bye-bye to everyone? No privacy friendly, privacy invasive bye-bye. A privacy preserving bye-bye, please.
So it's over and out for me. See you guys hopefully next week. My name remains Nuruddin Ibn Abdurrahman on Twitter, Nuruddin Adeshino on LinkedIn.
Goodbye, everyone. Oh, go ahead, Victoria.
Hi, goodbye, everyone. Okay, I can go ahead. Okay, I'm already talking anyway. Goodbye, everyone. I remember Victoria Oloni. I'm Victoria Oloni everywhere on all my platforms. Twitter, LinkedIn, my Medium. I have a post coming up on this. I have nothing to hide. This
yes, please watch out for that. Please watch out for that. It's the banger. I can say that. So, boy, you are muted. All right, Lejeune, do you want to say bye?
Sorry about that. Bye, everybody. I typed something in the chat box. It's been a time listening, and sharing perspective on this subject. I must say that I've learned a lot. And I hope I've also been able to add some insight and value to the conversation. Hopefully we'll see another time. Let's connect on Twitter. I put my Twitter handle on the chat box. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Lejeune.
Goodbye, everyone. It was nice having this conversation. My Twitter handle is also similar, and LinkedIn, Lejeune, Abbas on LinkedIn, and Lulu on Twitter. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon again. Bye. Have a great time.